Dad's finally dying, and I'm about to be $55 million richer. Those were my son's exact words, live streamed to 89,000 strangers on TikTok, from my hospital bed, while I lay there, supposedly unconscious, hooked up to machines in room 314 at Mercy General. Jason held his phone 6 inches from my face, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Look at this old fossil," he told his audience. 26 years I've had to deal with his cheap-ass ways. Driving the same beat-up truck, living in that dump house, wearing suits older than me. The heart monitor beeped steadily. The oxygen tank labeled H. Davis hissed softly in the corner. "But karma's finally catching up," Jason continued, adjusting his ring light for better angles. "Harrison Davis built a $55 million empire, and guess who's about to inherit every penny?" I wanted to smile. My son had no idea I could hear every word. What Jason didn't know, what he'd never bothered to ask, was why his old man lived so cheap. Why I drove that 2018 Ford F-150 with 127,000 miles instead of buying a luxury car. Why I wore the same 3 suits to work, rotated weekly, for the past 8 years. The answer lay buried in 20 years of receipts I'd kept in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Box 247. Every single document that proved I wasn't cheap, I was protecting him. October 15th, 2019. That's when it started. Jason was 21, fresh out of college, living in my house rent-free. I came home from the steel plant to find my bedroom ransacked. My late wife's jewelry box empty. Her wedding ring, a 1-carat diamond I'd saved 6 months to buy in 1987, gone. The pawn shop receipt I found in his jeans pocket told the whole story. 14-carat gold band with 1-carat diamond, $2,400. Sold to Mike's Gold and Loans on Riverside Avenue at 2:47 p.m. that same afternoon. I bought it back the next morning, never said a word. That was just the beginning. Bank statements from November 2019 showed 3 unauthorized withdrawals from our joint savings account, $800, $1,500, $3,000, $200. When I confronted him, Jason's eyes were glassy, pupils dilated to pinpoints. "Dad, I can explain." "Pack a bag," I told him. "We're going to Serenity Hills." Serenity Hills Rehabilitation Center. $45,000 for a 90-day program. I paid cash because insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatment. Jason lasted 63 days before walking out, claiming he was cured. The relapse came 4 months later. I found him passed out in the garage, needle still in his arm, surrounded by tools I'd inherited from my father. Tools worth maybe $800 that Jason had tried to sell on Craigslist for drug money. "Mr. Davis," said Dr. Margaret Thompson, the intervention specialist I hired in March 2020. "Jason needs intensive long-term care. I recommend Promises Malibu, $62,000, 90 days. This time, Jason completed the program, came home with a chip and a smile, and promises he'd never touch opioids again. 14 months later, I got a call from Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Jason had wrapped his Mustang, the one I'd bought him for graduation, around a telephone pole. Blood alcohol content, 0.14, cocaine in his system. The car was totaled. The telephone pole needed replacement. "Third time's the charm, Dad," Jason said from his hospital bed. Left arm in a cast, stitches across his forehead. "I swear, I'm done." Passes Treatment Center in Arizona. $38,000 for their luxury recovery experience. Swimming pools, yoga classes, gourmet meals, and one-on-one therapy with PhD counselors. Jason documented his entire stay on Instagram. Pictures of sunrise meditation sessions, videos of him playing volleyball with other patients, captions about finding himself and breaking generational trauma. 3 weeks after discharge, he was selling my power tools on Facebook Marketplace. But here's what Jason never understood, what he couldn't grasp through his addiction-fogged brain. Every dollar I spent on him was a dollar I didn't spend on myself. Every sacrifice was invisible to him because addicts only see their next fix. While he was getting massages at Passes, I was eating bologna sandwiches for lunch every day at the steel plant. While he was in group therapy talking about his feelings, I was working 16-hour days to cover his treatment costs, plus keep Davis Steel Corp running. My employees knew. Tom Wilson, my head of security, used to bring me coffee every morning at 5:30 a.m. because he knew I'd been there all night, going over contracts and budgets, figuring out how to fund another round of rehab without laying anyone off. "Boss," Tom said one morning in January 2022, "you look like hell." "Feel like it too," I admitted. "The boy appreciating what you're doing?" I handed him Jason's latest Instagram post, a video of him at some nightclub downtown, bottle service table, designer clothes I'd never seen before. The caption read, "Living my best life despite family drama. Hashtag self-made, hashtag no handouts." Tom just shook his head. That's when I realized the truth. Love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enabling. And I'd been enabling Jason's destruction by cushioning every fall, paying for every mistake, protecting him from every consequence. The final straw came in March 2024. Jason stormed into my office on the 12th floor of Davis Steel headquarters, demanding what he called his inheritance advance. $50,000 for what he claimed was a cryptocurrency investment opportunity he'd found on Reddit. "Son," I said, "you're 26 years old. You've never held a job longer than 3 months. You've cost me nearly $300,000 in rehab alone, and you want me to hand you 50 grand for internet coins?" "You don't get it, old man," Jason snarled. "I'm not asking. I'm telling you, that money is mine anyway. When you croak, everything goes to me. So why not give me a taste now?" The security cameras caught every word. Tom Wilson was monitoring from the next room, finger hovering over the emergency button in case things got physical. But I just sat there, calm as still water. "No," I said. Jason's face went from confused to furious in about 2 seconds. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. N-O. 2 letters. Simple word." He started pacing in front of my desk like a caged animal. "You're sitting on $55 million, Dad. $55 million, and you won't spare 50 grand to help your only son." "Help you do what, exactly?" "Lose it all on digital monopoly money?" "It's called cryptocurrency, you dinosaur. Bitcoin, Ethereum. Real investments that real smart people make. Not this blue-collar steel mill bullshit you've been doing for 40 years. I leaned back in my leather chair, the same one I'd bought used in 1995 when I first moved into this office. Blue-collar bullshit that paid for 3 different rehab centers, a college education you barely finished, and kept a roof over your head for 26 years. Jesus Christ, Dad. There you go again with the guilt trips. I paid for rehab. I paid for college. You know what you never paid for? Therapy to deal with having you as a father. The words hit exactly where he intended. But I'd learned something over the years dealing with Jason's addiction. Never react when someone's trying to hurt you. React when they're trying to help themselves. "Tom," I said into my desk intercom, "please escort Jason out of the building." "You're kicking me out? Your own son?" "I'm protecting my employees from someone who's clearly having an episode." Jason slammed both hands on my desk. The framed photo of his mother, taken just 6 months before she died, rattled but didn't fall. "You know what, Harrison? When you're dead, I'm going to sell this whole company, tear down every building, fire every employee, and turn it into condos. Davis Steel Corp will be a footnote in history, and there won't be a damn thing you can do about it." Tom Wilson appeared in the doorway, 6'3", former Marine, arms crossed. "Mr. Davis, everything okay in here? Tom, please make sure Jason finds his way to the parking garage, and make sure security gets a good look at him. I don't want him back in this building without an appointment." "You're making a mistake, old man," Jason said, backing toward the door. "A big mistake. I'm your blood. I'm all you've got left. And when your heart finally gives out, and we both know it will, every penny you've hoarded will be mine. Every single penny." The elevator doors closed behind him and Tom. I sat alone in my office, looking out at the steel mill that had been my life's work. 43 years since I'd started as a line worker making $8 an hour. 37 years since I'd bought my first small welding business. 29 years since I'd incorporated Davis Steel Corp. And my own son wanted to tear it all down. That night, I called Patricia Hayes. Patricia had been my attorney for 35 years, since back when I was just another small business owner trying to figure out contracts and liability insurance. She'd handled my wife's estate when cancer took her in 2016. She'd been there for every major decision since. "Harrison? It's past 9 o'clock. Is everything all right? Patricia, I need to see you tomorrow morning, first thing, and I need you to bring a blank will." A blank Harrison, what happened? I told her about the confrontation, about Jason's threats, about the 20 years of rehab bills, and stolen jewelry and broken promises that had led us to this moment. You want to disinherit him, she said. It wasn't a question. I want to do what I should have done years ago. Set boundaries. Real ones. Harrison, you know I have to ask. Are you sure about this? He's your only child. I looked at the framed photo on my desk. My wife, Maria, holding baby Jason at the hospital in 1998. She'd died believing our son would carry on the Davis name with honor. She'd never lived to see the addiction, the arrests, the cruel words, the entitled demands. Patricia, if I died tomorrow and left Jason $55 million, how long do you think it would take him to destroy himself? She was quiet for a long moment. Based on what you've told me over the years? 6 months, maybe less. So by leaving him everything, I'd be killing him. Just more slowly than the drugs would. What do you want to do instead? I've been thinking about this for months, actually. Ever since Jason's third rehab stint, I'd wondered what would happen if I removed the safety net entirely. Not out of cruelty, but out of love. Real love. The kind that says no when yes would be easier. The Davis Foundation for Addiction Recovery, I said. I want to establish an endowment that helps people get clean without enabling them to stay sick. Real accountability, real consequences, real support. And Jason? Jason gets a job. A real one. 40 hours a week, honest work, earning his own money. And if he can stay clean for 5 consecutive years, 5 years, Patricia, not 5 months, then we'll talk about a trust fund. A small one. How small? $50,000. Enough to prove he can handle responsibility. Not enough to destroy his life. And if he can't stay clean, then he'll learn what every other addict learns. The world doesn't owe you anything just because you're suffering. The next morning, Patricia arrived at my office at 7 a.m. with her briefcase and a solemn expression. We spent 4 hours drafting documents that would change everything. But first, I needed Jason to show me exactly who he'd become. The plan came to me that same evening, sitting in my study at home. The house Maria and I bought in 1995 for $180,000. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,800 square feet in a middle-class neighborhood, where kids still rode bikes and neighbors knew each other's names. Jason always complained about this house. Dad, you could afford a mansion in the hills. Why do we live in this dump? Because this house held memories money can't buy. Maria's garden in the backyard, the kitchen table where she helped Jason with homework, the living room where we watched him take his first steps. But that night, surrounded by Maria's photos and our shared history, I realized something. Jason didn't want to preserve our family's legacy. He wanted to cash it in. I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled my son, Jason Davis, age 26, no LinkedIn profile, no professional website, but plenty of social media. His YouTube channel, Jason's Journey to Success, launched in 2019, right after his first rehab stint. 43 videos total. Most recent upload, 6 months ago. Subscribe count, 2,847. The thumbnails showed Jason in expensive clothes I'd never seen, standing next to cars I'd never bought him, making promises about financial freedom, and breaking free from toxic family patterns. I clicked on his most popular video, Why I Cut Contact with My Rich Dad, Emotional, posted in December 2022. 89,000 views. For 12 minutes, I watched my son lie to strangers about our relationship. He claimed I'd been emotionally abusive and financially controlling. He said I'd threatened to cut him off unless he worked at the steel mill for slave wages. And he told his audience that he'd been forced to go no contact for his mental health. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. You're so brave for sharing this. Toxic parents don't deserve your energy. You're better off without that negativity. What Jason didn't mention, the 3 rehab centers, the stolen jewelry, the crashed car, the $50,000 in bail money I'd posted when he got arrested for possession in 2021, the monthly allowance I still sent to his apartment, $1,150 that kept him housed and fed while he made YouTube videos about my supposed abuse. I scrolled through more content. Instagram posts from expensive restaurants, TikTok videos filmed in what looked like a luxury apartment, Twitter rants about generational wealth hoarding and boomer greed, All of it funded by the man he'd publicly declared toxic. At 11:47 p.m., I called Patricia again. Harrison? What's wrong now? I need to accelerate our timeline. And I need to add something to the will. What kind of something? A test. I want to give Jason every opportunity to show me who he really is. Not who he pretends to be online, not who he is when he needs money, but who he becomes when he thinks I can't stop him anymore. Patricia sighed. What are you thinking? Medical leave, temporary incapacitation, doctor's orders to step back from the business for health reasons. Harrison, you're 67 years old and you work 14-hour days. No doctor would argue with that recommendation. Exactly. And if I'm indisposed, Jason might finally drop the victim act and show his true colors. This sounds dangerous. What if he actually tries to take control of the company? What if he challenges your mental capacity? I'd thought about this too. That's why I need you to finalize everything tomorrow. New will, foundation paperwork, power of attorney documents, all legally bulletproof. And I need Dr. Stevens at Mercy General to coordinate the medical side. Stevens, your cardiologist? He's been telling me for months to slow down, reduce stress. Well, I'm about to give him the perfect excuse to put me under medical supervision. The next morning, Patricia and I met at her law office at 6 a.m. By 10 a.m., we'd established the Davis Foundation for Addiction Recovery as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. By noon, we'd transferred $49 million into the foundation's endowment account at First National Bank. The remaining $6 million would cover my living expenses, medical care, and a small inheritance for Jason if he earned it. But first, I needed to see what kind of man my son had become when he thought no one was watching. Dr. Stevens agreed to the plan immediately. Harrison, your blood pressure is through the roof. Your stress levels are clinical. I can justify supervised medical leave without lying to anyone. How long? As long as you need. Heart patients require careful monitoring. Sometimes that monitoring happens to coincide with family estate planning. He smiled. Dr. Stevens had known Jason since he was 12 years old. He'd been the one to recommend the first rehabilitation center after Jason's overdose. Doctor, I said, what happens to addicts when they think they've finally beaten the system? They usually prove they haven't beaten anything at all. Dr. Stevens admitted me to Mercy General on March 18, 2024. Room 314. Heart monitoring, they told Jason. Precautionary measures after what the medical charts described as cardiac irregularities brought on by chronic workplace stress. What the charts didn't mention was the specific type of monitoring we'd arranged. It's called twilight sedation, doctor, Stevens explained to Jason in the hallway outside my room while I lay perfectly still with my eyes closed. Your father appears unconscious, but he's actually in a medically induced light sleep. He can't respond to stimulation, but his brain activity remains normal. Jason's voice carried that fake concern he'd perfected over the years. So he can't hear us talking? No. Patients in twilight sedation have no awareness of their surroundings. It's essentially a medicinal coma. Very peaceful. If only doctor. Stevens knew how good an actor I'd become. The truth was simpler. I was awake for everything. The heart monitoring equipment included audio recording devices that Patricia had arranged through a private security firm. Every word spoken in room 314 was being documented for potential legal proceedings. Jason's first live stream started 30 minutes after doctor. Stevens left. What's up, TikTok fam? Jason here with some really heavy news. He held his phone 18 inches from my face, adjusting the angle to catch both of us in frame. So my dad just had a heart episode. We're here at Mercy General, and honestly, it's not looking good. The heart monitor beeped steadily. The oxygen tank hissed. Perfect background audio for his performance. I know a lot of you have been following my journey with family trauma, and this is just... Wow, this is really hard. He paused for effect, lowering his voice to that conspiratorial whisper that social media algorithms love. But I wanted to be real with you guys about what's happening. I watched his follower count through barely cracked eyelids. The live stream had started with 12,847 viewers. Within 10 minutes, it was up to 15,203. The doctors say it could go either way, Jason continued, panning the camera across my supposedly unconscious face. Dad's been working himself to death for 40 years, building this steel empire, never taking care of himself. And now, he let that sentence hang, generating sympathy and engagement in equal measure. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Things between me and my father have been complicated, really complicated, but seeing him like this, Jason's voice cracked with practiced emotion. It puts everything in perspective, you know. The comments started flooding in immediately. Sending prayers. Stay strong, Jason. Family first, always. Your dad is lucky to have you there. Jason read several comments aloud, thanking his TikTok family for their support. Then he dropped his voice even lower. I probably shouldn't say this, but Dad's been pretty successful, like really successful. Davis Steel Corp is worth serious money, and if something happens to him, he shrugged, letting his audience fill in the blanks. Day 2 brought 23,681 viewers to his morning live stream. Jason had positioned his phone on a tripod for better production value, and he'd changed into a designer hoodie I'd never seen before. Morning, everyone. Dad's condition hasn't changed much, still unconscious, still on the machines. But I've been thinking a lot about legacy, about what we leave behind. He pulled out his laptop and opened what looked like a spreadsheet. So I did some research last night. Davis Steel Corp employs about 400 people. The company's estimated value is somewhere between $50 and $60 million, and as Dad's only heir. Jason smiled that same smile I'd seen when he was 7 years old and had successfully talked his way out of trouble. Let's just say things are about to change around here. Big time. By day 5, his audience had grown to 34,127 regular viewers. Jason had established a routine: morning live stream from the hospital, afternoon reflection videos from my house, where he was staying to be close to Dad, and evening Q&A sessions where he answered questions about inheritance law and estate planning, questions he had no business answering with information that was completely wrong. Someone asked about probate, Jason said during his day 7 evening stream. Basically, when someone dies with a will, the courts have to validate it. But here's the thing, I'm Dad's only family, his only heir, so it's pretty much automatic that everything goes to me. Ruth Anderson, the night shift supervisor, had become my unofficial intelligence officer. Every morning at 6 a.m., she'd brief me on Jason's overnight activities while pretending to check my vitals. He was here until almost midnight, Ruth whispered on day 8. Live streaming again. This time he had props. Props? Your old photo albums. Pictures of you and your wife. He was showing them to his audience, telling stories about your humble beginnings and how you clawed your way to success. Made it sound like a real rags to riches story. What kind of stories? Ruth pulled out her phone and showed me Jason's TikTok account. The latest video was titled, My Dad's Incredible Journey from Poor to $55 Million, Emotional Storytime. I watched Jason flip through photos of Maria and me from the early days. Our wedding in 1985. The tiny apartment we shared when I was still working line jobs. The day we bought our first house. Dad never talks about this stuff, Jason told his audience. But I think it's important for people to know where we came from. How hard he worked. How much he sacrificed. The comments were eating it up. Your dad is an inspiration. What an incredible story. You must be so proud of him. He raised an amazing son. What Jason didn't tell his audience, every photo he was showing came from albums Maria had carefully organized before she died. Albums that included her handwritten captions describing our struggles, our hopes, our dreams for Jason's future. Albums he'd never bothered to look at until he needed content for social media. By day 12, Jason's TikTok following had exploded to 89,442. His morning live stream, Dad's Fighting for His Life, Day 12 update, had been viewed 2.3 million times. News outlets had started picking up the story. Son documents father's battle for life on social media. And through it all, I lay perfectly still, listening to every word, watching every gesture, recording every moment of my son's true character. On day 15, my sister Margaret showed up. Margaret Davis Thompson, 64 years old, retired high school principal, and the only person who'd never been afraid to tell me when I was making a mistake with Jason. She'd driven 3 hours from Springfield after seeing one of Jason's live streams shared on Facebook. I heard her heels clicking down the hospital corridor before she even reached my room. Margaret had always walked like she owned whatever building she was in. Jason, she said, her voice carrying that tone she'd perfected during 30 years of dealing with difficult teenagers. What exactly do you think you're doing? Jason was in the middle of his afternoon stream, 67,000 viewers watching him eat lunch from the hospital cafeteria while providing real-time updates on my condition. Aunt Margaret! Hey everyone, this is my dad's sister. She just got here from... Turn that thing off? What? Oh, the live stream? It's okay, Aunt Margaret. I've been sharing Dad's journey with my community. They've been incredibly supportive. Turn it off. The phone went dark. I could practically feel Jason's followers refreshing their screens, wondering where the drama went. Jason, sit down. We need to talk. Look, I know this might seem weird to you, but social media is how my generation processes trauma. My followers have been with me through Dad's whole medical crisis. They're like family. Your father is lying in a hospital bed, possibly dying, and you're treating it like entertainment. That's not fair. I'm documenting a difficult time in our family. I'm being authentic about the experience. Margaret's laugh had zero humor in it. Authentic. Jason, do you have any idea how much money your father has spent keeping you alive over the past 5 years? I don't know what you mean. Your apartment. The one-bedroom downtown with the exposed brick walls that you film your videos in. Who do you think pays the $18.50 a month rent? Silence. Your car payments. $520 a month for that Camaro. Who makes those payments, Jason? More silence. Your health insurance. $680 a month because you're considered high risk due to your addiction history. Who's been covering that? Dad never told me specific amounts. Because you never asked. Margaret's voice rose. You just assumed the money appeared magically, like everything else in your life. I heard Jason's phone buzzing constantly. His followers were probably flooding his DMs, wondering why the live stream cut off so abruptly. Aunt Margaret, you don't understand the complexity of my relationship with Dad. There's been a lot of emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? Jason, your father worked 16-hour days to pay for your rehab. 3 different facilities. Do you know what those cost? That was his choice. Serenity Hills, $45,000. Promises Malibu, $62,000. Passages in Arizona, $38,000. I know because I helped him research the options when you overdosed. The room went completely quiet, except for the steady beeping of my heart monitor. And while he was working those 16-hour days, wearing the same 3 suits and driving the same beat-up truck, you were posting videos online, calling him cheap and emotionally abusive. I was processing my trauma. You were getting attention for playing the victim. There's a difference. Margaret's purse snapped open. I heard papers rustling. These are bank statements, Jason. Your father's been supporting you financially for 26 years. $1,850 for rent, $520 for the car, $680 for insurance, $300 for your phone plan, $250 for utilities, $4,200 a month, every month for the past 3 years. I didn't realize. That's $50,400 a year, Jason. Every year. While you've been telling the internet that your father is financially abusive. Margaret's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Your followers don't know that you've never held a job longer than 4 months. They don't know about the 3 arrests. They don't know about the stolen jewelry, or the crashed cars, or the lies. They see a grieving son sharing his pain, but I see a 26-year-old man who's never learned the difference between buff and enabling. She gathered her papers and headed for the door. When your father wakes up, and I pray to God he does, you're going to have some serious explaining to do. Margaret's visit didn't stop Jason. If anything, it made him double down. That evening's live stream was titled Family Drama Exposed, Aunt Attacked Me at Hospital. 94,000 viewers tuned in to watch Jason spin Margaret's confrontation into content. So, that was intense, Jason said, positioned in his usual spot next to my bed. My aunt basically ambushed me here at the hospital, in front of Dad, and started screaming about money. It was really triggering, honestly. He'd perfected this victim narrative over years of practice. Every criticism became an attack. Every boundary became abuse. Every consequence became evidence of how unfairly the world treated him. She was throwing around all these numbers about rent and car payments, trying to make me feel guilty for accepting help from my father. But here's the thing my family doesn't understand. That's what parents are supposed to do. They're supposed to support their children. The comments poured in faster than he could read them. Your aunt sounds toxic. Family can be the worst sometimes. You don't owe anyone gratitude for basic parenting. Stay strong, Jason. Exactly, Jason said, reading the supportive comments aloud. My dad chose to have a child. That comes with financial responsibilities. I didn't ask to be born. By the next morning, his video had 2.3 million views. The TikTok algorithm had pushed it to users far beyond his usual audience. Comments flooded in from teenagers and young adults who saw Jason's story as validation for their own family conflicts. But algorithms work both ways, and not everyone who saw Jason's content was sympathetic. The turning point came when Channel 7 News picked up the story. Their afternoon segment led with Local Man Documents, Father's Final Days on Social Media Community Divided. Reporter Sandra Chen interviewed 3 random TikTok users who'd been following Jason's streams. 2 were supportive. The third was a 48-year-old mother named Linda Rodriguez. I watched a few of his videos, Linda said on camera, and something felt off. This young man is living in what looks like an expensive apartment, wearing designer clothes, driving a nice car, but he's telling everyone his father is financially abusive? It doesn't add up. Linda Rodriguez had done what Jason never expected: basic fact-checking. I looked up Davis Steel Corporation. It's a legitimate business that's been operating for almost 30 years. They employ 400 people. They've never had layoffs, even during the 2008 recession. This isn't some greedy corporation. It's a family business that supports entire families. Channel 7's investigative team started digging deeper. They found Jason's old YouTube videos, his Instagram posts, his Twitter complaints about his cheap dad. They also found the public records showing Harrison Davis as a regular donor to local charities, the Children's Hospital, the Veterans Association, the Community Food Bank. Donations that totaled $68,000 in 2023 alone. Mr. Davis gives more money to charity each year than most people make in salary, reported Channel 7's investigative journalist, Mark Stevens. This doesn't match the image of a greedy, financially abusive parent that his son has been promoting online. The story aired on Thursday evening. By Friday morning, Jason's TikTok comments had shifted dramatically. Wait, your dad donates to children's hospitals? This doesn't seem right. Something's fishy here. Are you scamming people for sympathy? Jason tried to control the narrative with a live stream titled Media Lies and Family Betrayal, setting the record straight, up top. But he was losing the crowd. Look, my dad's donations to charity don't erase years of emotional manipulation, he told his audience. Abusers often appear generous to outsiders. It's part of their public image. But the comments kept coming. Dude, you're literally filming him while he's unconscious. This feels exploitative. Maybe your aunt was right. How is accepting rent money abuse? The final blow came when someone found Margaret's LinkedIn profile and realized she'd been a high school principal for 30 years. Her professional background gave weight to her accusations. Meanwhile, Jason's digital footprint showed years of failed ventures and public complaints about family support. Local Facebook groups started sharing the Channel 7 story. The narrative was shifting from poor son documenting father's final days to entitled adult child exploiting family crisis for social media fame. Jason's follower count, which had peaked at 127,000, began dropping. First slowly, then rapidly. 119,000, 112,000, 104,000. By Sunday evening, it was down to 87,000. The comments on his latest videos were brutal. This is disgusting. Let your father die in peace. You're everything wrong with social media. Take some responsibility for your life. But Jason wasn't done. In fact, he was about to make his biggest mistake yet. Sunday night's live stream was titled The Truth About My Inheritance, Financial Breakdown. Jason had clearly been drinking. His words slurred slightly as he spoke to 63,000 remaining viewers. Since everyone wants to talk about money, let's talk about money, he said. Davis Steel Corporation is worth $55 million. $55 million. And when Dad dies, that all comes to me. He pulled out his laptop and opened a spreadsheet he'd clearly spent hours creating. I've done the math, guys. After taxes and legal fees, I'm looking at about $38 million. Net worth. And you know what I'm going to do with it? The live stream would end up being archived as evidence. Monday morning, Patricia Hayes arrived at the hospital with a briefcase and a grim expression. She'd been monitoring Jason's social media spiral from her law office, documenting every live stream, every comment, every public statement about his inheritance expectations. "How much of this did you anticipate?" she asked me quietly while Jason was downstairs in the cafeteria, probably preparing for his morning live stream. I opened my eyes fully for the first time in 2 weeks. Not the social media circus, but the entitlement, the complete lack of self-awareness. That's exactly who I thought he'd become. Patricia pulled out her tablet and showed me the numbers. Duncan Ross finished his investigation yesterday. The financial audit is complete. Duncan Ross, former FBI financial crimes investigator, now private consultant. Patricia had hired him to compile a comprehensive record of Jason's costs versus contributions over the past 20 years. Not for revenge, for evidence. "Show me," I said. Duncan's report was 67 pages of meticulously documented facts. Bank statements, receipts, medical bills, legal fees, insurance claims. Every dollar I'd spent on Jason since his 16th birthday, organized by category and cross-referenced with public records. Education. University of Illinois tuition, room, board, books, spending money. 4 years. Total, $187,000. Medical mental health, 3 rehab facilities, ongoing therapy, psychiatric consultations, emergency room visits, prescription medications. 6 years of active treatment. Total, $342,000. Legal fees, 3 arrests for possession, 1 DUI, 1 reckless driving, 2 civil suits from creditors. Jason had stiffed. Attorney fees, court costs, fines, restitution, total $37,000. Housing, rent, utilities, security deposits for 7 different apartments Jason had been evicted from between 2020 and 2024, plus the current downtown loft. Total $89,000. Transportation, 5 different cars after Jason destroyed, crashed, or lost the previous ones. Insurance premiums, repairs, registration fees. Total $156,000. Daily living, phone bills, health insurance, groceries, clothing, entertainment, streaming services, gym memberships. 26 years of supporting another adult human being. Total $394,000. Grand total $1,205,000. $1.2 million, Patricia said, over 20 years. That's not including the inheritance he expects to receive. And his contributions? Duncan had tracked this too. Jason's longest employment, 4 months as a social media coordinator for a local restaurant, making $11 an hour. His total lifetime earnings from legitimate employment, $7,400. His side hustles, YouTube ad revenue, failed dropshipping business, cryptocurrency trading, had actually lost money. Net contribution to household finances, over 26 years, negative $2,300. "He's cost you more than most people make in their entire careers," Patricia said, "and he's convinced himself he's the victim." But the financial audit was only part of Duncan's investigation. The real revelation was Jason's digital footprint. Duncan had compiled every social media post Jason had made about our family since 2019. Screenshots of Instagram stories calling me emotionally abusive. TikTok videos claiming I was financially controlling. YouTube content describing our relationship as toxic and narcissistic. All posted while living in apartments I paid for, driving cars I bought, eating food I funded. "The pattern is clear," Duncan explained in his executive summary. Subject consistently portrays provider as abusive while simultaneously depending entirely on provider for financial survival. Subject shows no evidence of genuine independence or self-sufficiency. Patricia flipped to the final section of the report, character references. Duncan had interviewed 12 people who knew Jason personally, former employers, rehab counselors, landlords, college roommates. The picture they painted was consistent. Charming when he needed something, absent when others needed him, always someone else's fault when things went wrong. "My favorite quote," Patricia said, "is from his former boss at the restaurant. Jason was great at generating social media buzz, but he'd disappear whenever we needed him to actually show up for shifts. He seemed to think the job was optional." Doctor, Stevens appeared in the doorway. Ladies, we need to wrap this up. Jason's heading back upstairs. I closed my eyes and resumed my unconscious act as Patricia packed away the evidence. But I'd seen enough. Duncan's investigation had confirmed what I'd suspected for years. Jason wasn't just financially dependent on me. He was emotionally and psychologically dependent on the idea that his problems were always someone else's fault. The victim narrative wasn't just his way of getting sympathy online. It was his entire identity. Footsteps in the hallway, Jason's voice talking to someone, probably another live stream audience. Time for the final act. Patricia, I whispered, schedule the will reading for tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. sharp, and make sure there's room for witnesses. How many witnesses? As many as possible. It's time Jason learned the difference between enabling and love. Tuesday morning, 9:47, A.M. Davis Steel Corporation conference room, 12th floor. The cherry table that seated 12 was full. Patricia Hayes at the head, legal documents spread before her like battle plans. Margaret Davis Thompson to her right, tissues already in hand. Dr. Stevens and nurse Ruth Anderson representing the medical team that had monitored my recovery. Jason sat across from them, phone propped on a tripod he'd brought specifically for this moment. His TikTok live stream showed 94,000 viewers and climbing. The title read, Inheritance Reveal, Dad's $55 million will reading live. But Jason had made one critical miscalculation. He'd invited Channel 7 News to document what he assumed would be his moment of triumph. Reporter Sandra Chen and cameraman Mike Torres were positioned in the corner, rolling footage for the evening news. This is it, everyone, Jason whispered to his phone camera, while Patricia organized her paperwork. 26 years of waiting. Dad built this empire, and now it's finally time for me to take over. The comments were split between supporters cheering him on and critics questioning his motives. But Jason only read the positive ones aloud. OMG, you deserve this. Your dad would be proud. Time to live your best life. Patricia cleared her throat. Before we begin, I need to confirm that all parties understand this is a legal proceeding being recorded for potential court review. Absolutely, Jason said, flashing his camera-ready smile. Full transparency. That's how I've always operated. Margaret made a sound that might have been a snort. The last will and testament of Harrison Davis, dated March 19, 2024, has been properly witnessed and notarized. Mr. Davis was of sound mind and body when these documents were executed. Jason leaned forward, hands clasped like he was praying. His live stream chat was moving so fast it was impossible to read individual comments. To my sister, Margaret Davis Thompson, who has been my moral compass and conscience for 67 years, I leave my personal effects, family photographs, and the sum of $200,000. Margaret dabbed her eyes. Harrison always was sentimental. To Dr. Stevens and the medical staff at Mercy General, who provided exceptional care during my recent hospitalization, I establish a $50,000 fund for continuing education in cardiac care. Jason's smile widened. These were just the small bequests. The real money was coming. To my employees at Davis Steel Corporation, I establish a pension enhancement fund of $500,000 to be distributed based on years of service and need. Dad always loved his workers, Jason told his audience. Classic blue-collar guy. But let's get to the main event, right, everyone? The chat exploded with dollar sign emojis and fire symbols. Patricia turned the page. Her expression was carefully neutral. To my son, Jason Davis, who has struggled with addiction and entitlement for the majority of his adult life. Jason's smile faltered slightly. Struggled wasn't the word he'd expected. I leave the sum of $1,000. The conference room went dead silent. Jason's phone was still live streaming to 97,000 viewers, but he'd forgotten it existed. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. I'm sorry, what? $1,000, Patricia repeated clearly. The same amount you had in your savings account when your addiction began in 2004. That has to be a mistake. A typo? 1,000 million? $1,000, period. Jason's chat erupted in confusion. Wait, what? Is this real? Did she say 1,000? This can't be right. Margaret was staring at the table. Dr. Stevens looked like he was trying not to smile. Ruth Anderson was openly grinning. The remainder of my estate, Patricia continued, including all assets of Davis Steel Corporation, all real estate holdings, all investment accounts, and all liquid assets, totaling approximately $54 million, I leave to the newly established Davis Foundation for Addiction Recovery. Jason stood up so fast his chair fell backward. The crash was perfectly audible on his live stream. This is bullshit. This is fucking bullshit. He can't do this. The Foundation's mission, Patricia read steadily, is to provide addiction recovery services with accountability measures, helping individuals achieve sobriety without enabling destructive behavior. I'm his son, his only child. You can't just give away my inheritance. Sandra Chen from Channel 7 was getting everything on camera. This was better than reality TV. Jason, Patricia said calmly, this is legal. Your father was mentally competent when he signed these documents. He had every right to dispose of his assets as he saw fit. Jason grabbed his phone, holding it inches from his face. Did you see this? Did everyone see this? My own father screwed me over. $54 million to strangers instead of his own blood. The live stream comments were brutal now. Maybe you should have been a better son. Your dad was right to cut you off. This is what entitlement gets you. Karma. But Jason wasn't finished. 20 years of entitlement doesn't disappear in 30 seconds. I'm going to contest this. This is elder abuse. Financial manipulation. Dad wasn't in his right mind. That's when the conference room door opened. I walked in slowly, using a cane for effect, but perfectly steady on my feet. Dr. Stevens had removed the fake bandages that morning. I was wearing my best suit, one of the 3 I'd rotated for 8 years, but cleaned and pressed for this occasion. The room exploded. Margaret gasped. Ruth Anderson started laughing. Sandra Chen grabbed her cameraman's arm and pointed. Jason's phone clattered to the table, still live streaming. Sorry to disappoint you, son, I said, settling into the chair at the head of the table. But I heard every word. Jason's face went through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, rage, panic, and finally the dawning realization that he'd been played. Dad, you've been awake? Twilight sedation, I explained calmly, allows consciousness while appearing unconscious. Dr. Stevens and I thought it would be educational for both of us. I pulled out my own phone and opened TikTok. Jason's live stream was still running, now showing 103,000 viewers watching his public humiliation in real time. Fascinating content, Jason, especially the part where you called me a greedy old fossil and promised to tear down Davis Steel Corporation. The live stream chat was moving so fast it was just a blur of comments and emojis. Dad, I can explain. No need to explain. Patricia has compiled a comprehensive report of your contributions to our family over the past 20 years. Patricia opened Duncan Ross's investigation file. Jason, in the 22 years since you turned 18, you've cost your father $1.2 million. Your total contribution to household finances has been negative $2,300. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the steel mill floor. 400 employees going about their daily work, unaware that their jobs had just been secured for the next generation. You know what the difference is between us, Jason? He was still staring at me like I'd risen from the dead. I built something. You've spent 26 years tearing things down. My marriage, my peace of mind, my financial security, my reputation, all so you could play victim on social media. I turned back to face him. The Davis Foundation will help people like you, Jason. People struggling with addiction who want to change. But it won't enable people who want to stay victims forever. Jason's live stream was still running. 107,000 viewers watching the most expensive lesson in family dynamics ever broadcast on social media. Dad, please. I can change. I can be better. I hope you can, son. I really do, and the foundation will even help you if you're serious about recovery. But that's a choice you'll have to make without my money, as a safety net. Sandra Chen stepped forward with her microphone. Mr. Davis, were you planning this confrontation from the beginning? I smiled. Miss Chen, I was planning to teach my son the difference between love and enabling. Everything else was just documentation. 6 months later, the Davis Foundation for Addiction Recovery had helped 847 families in its first operating year. The facility we opened in the old Davis Steel Training Center had a 93% completion rate, the highest in the state. Jason's TikTok account had been suspended 3 days after the will reading. not by me, but by the platform itself. Apparently, exploiting a family medical crisis for views violated their community guidelines. His YouTube channel was still active, but with only 2,400 subscribers, most of them hate watchers waiting for his next meltdown. Channel 7's documentary, The $55 Million Lesson, won a regional Emmy for investigative journalism. Sandra Chen had followed Jason's story for months, documenting his slow, reluctant journey toward actual accountability. He was working now, 40 hours a week at a warehouse in Springfield, loading trucks for $14 an hour. Margaret had gotten him the job through a friend, but she'd made it clear. One missed shift, one excuse, one hint of his old entitlement, and he was on his own. The apartment he'd filmed all those live streams in? Gone. He lived in a studio now, $400 a month, furnished with secondhand everything. No ring lights, no tripods, no audience for his drama. But here's the thing that surprised everyone, including me. Jason was clean. 6 months and counting. Not because he wanted to be at first, but because he couldn't afford not to be. Addiction is expensive, and $14 an hour doesn't leave room for bad decisions. The Davis Foundation had offered him counseling. Free, comprehensive, no strings attached. He'd refused initially, too proud, too angry, too convinced he was the victim of some elaborate conspiracy. But desperation has a way of breaking down pride. Last week, Margaret called me from the Foundation's main facility. Jason had shown up asking about their program. Not demanding, not entitled, just asking. "He looks different, Harrison," she said. "Thinner. Tired, but different." I was standing in my office on the 12th floor, looking down at the steel mill floor where 400 people still had jobs because I'd chosen accountability over enabling. Different how? Quiet, like he's actually listening for the first time in 20 years. I didn't know if Jason would complete the program. I didn't know if he'd stay clean, stay employed, stay humble. Recovery isn't a destination, it's a daily choice. But for the first time since he was 16 years old, Jason was making that choice without my money as a safety net. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference.